Join me as I dive deep into the lives of some of the most notorious criminals and try to uncover the secrets that the world doesn't know. Notorious criminals have always fascinated us, but they're also a stark reminder of the darker side of humanity. Their crimes send ripples of fear through society, leaving behind a trail of victims and destruction. Today, we're going to explore the lives of some of the most infamous criminals and examine the impact they've had on our world. Law enforcement faces an uphill battle when it comes to capturing and dealing with notorious criminals. These individuals often have a sophisticated network of associates and operatives who will stop at nothing to protect their leader. They're masters of disguise, deception, and manipulation, making it extremely difficult for authorities to track them down. The cat-and-mouse game between law enforcement and these criminals creates an atmosphere of fear and chaos, where no one knows what's going to happen next. Additionally, the mere presence of these criminals in a community can lead to a breakdown in social cohesion, as people become wary of trusting their neighbors and friends. The feeling of uncertainty and vulnerability can be overwhelming, making it even harder for law enforcement to do their job. Moreover, notorious criminals often have a knack for exploiting the vulnerabilities of their victims. They prey on the weak, the vulnerable, and the unsuspecting, using their charm and charisma to lure them into a false sense of security. This makes it even more challenging for law enforcement to identify and apprehend them, as they're able to blend in seamlessly with their surroundings. The sheer brutality and cunning of these criminals means that they can strike at any moment, leaving behind a trail of devastation and despair. In many cases, notorious criminals are able to evade capture for years, even decades, due to their ability to stay one step ahead of the law. They're masters of disguise, able to change their appearance, their identity, and even their modus operandi, making it extremely difficult for authorities to track them down. This cat-and-mouse game can go on for years, with the criminal always seeming to be one step ahead of the law. It's a frustrating and demoralizing experience for law enforcement, who feel like they're constantly banging their heads against a brick wall. The backgrounds of notorious criminals are often shrouded in mystery, with many of them coming from humble beginnings. Take, for example, the infamous serial killer Ted Bundy. On the surface, he was a charming and charismatic individual, with a degree in psychology and a passion for politics. But beneath the facade lay a monster, responsible for the brutal murder of dozens of young women. Bundy's ability to blend in with his surroundings, combined with his cunning and intelligence, made him a formidable foe for law enforcement. Another example is the notorious drug lord, Pablo Escobar. Growing up in a poor neighborhood in Colombia, Escobar was forced to rely on his wits and cunning to survive. He began his criminal career as a small-time thief before graduating to become one of the most powerful drug lords in the world. Escobar's empire was built on a foundation of violence, intimidation, and corruption, with him stopping at nothing to eliminate his rivals and protect his empire. Then there's the case of Al Capone, the infamous gangster who ruled Chicago during the Prohibition era. Capone's rise to power was built on a foundation of violence, corruption, and intimidation, with him using his charm and charisma to win over the hearts and minds of the people. But beneath the facade lay a ruthless and cunning individual who would stop at nothing to maintain his grip on power. One of the most shocking twists in the story of notorious criminals is the way they're often brought down by their own hubris. Take, for example, the case of John Gotti, the notorious mob boss who was known as the Teflon Don. Gotti's arrogance and overconfidence led him to make mistakes, which ultimately resulted in his downfall. In 1990, Gotti was arrested and charged with murder, racketeering, and obstruction of justice, marking the beginning of the end of his criminal empire. The downfall of notorious criminals often marks a significant turning point in their story. For many, it's the first time they've ever been held accountable for their crimes, and it's a moment of reckoning for both the criminal and their victims. sense of relief and closure that comes with the capture and conviction of a notorious criminal is palpable, and it's a testament to the hard work and dedication of law enforcement. In the case of Pablo Escobar, it was his own ego and arrogance that ultimately led to his downfall. In 1993, Escobar was killed in a shootout with Colombian police, bringing an end to his reign of terror. The relief and jubilation that followed his death were palpable, as Colombians celebrated the end of an era of violence and fear. The capture and conviction of notorious criminals is a crucial step in bringing closure to their victims and their families. It's a testament to the power of justice and the rule of law, and it sends a strong message to would-be criminals that they will be held accountable for their actions. In conclusion, the stories of notorious criminals are a stark reminder of the darker side of humanity. They're a testament to the power of evil and the devastating impact it can have on our world. Today, we've explored the lives of some of the most infamous criminals and examined the impact they've had on our world. What do you think about these notorious criminals? Do you have a favorite crime story or a favorite criminal? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to explore more crime stories, be sure to check out our next video on the most shocking criminal confessions. Thanks for watching. Alphonse Gabriel Al Capone was born on January 17, 1899, in Brooklyn, New York, to Italian immigrant parents. His father was a barber, his mother a seamstress, and the family lived in a poor but hard-working neighborhood. As a child, Capone showed promise in school, but his temper often got the best of him. At 14, he was expelled for striking a teacher, ending his formal education. With few prospects, he turned to the streets, where he quickly fell in with the 5 Points Gang, a notorious criminal organization in New York City. Capone's life took a dramatic turn when he met Johnny Torrio, a seasoned gangster who saw potential in the young man. Torrio introduced Capone to the world of organized crime, and soon he became Torrio's trusted enforcer. But it wasn't until Capone moved to Chicago that he truly began his ascent to power. In the early 1920s, Prohibition was in full effect, and the illegal alcohol trade was one of the most lucrative businesses in the country. Capone and Torrio saw an opportunity. Together, they built a vast bootlegging empire, controlling speakeasies and smuggling liquor into the city. But not everyone was on board. The previous boss, James Big Jim Colosimo, refused to get involved in bootlegging. In 1920, he was assassinated, clearing the way for Torrio and Capone to expand their operations. Though never proven, many believed Capone was involved in the hit. By 1925, after surviving an assassination attempt, Torrio decided to retire, leaving Capone in charge of the Chicago outfit. At just 26 years old, Capone controlled a multi-million-dollar criminal empire. His influence stretched across Chicago, from the politicians in City Hall to the police on the streets. He used bribes, threats, and violence to maintain control. But unlike other criminals, Capone also had a softer public image. He donated to charities, funded soup kitchens during the Great Depression, and was seen by some as a Robin Hood figure. But beneath the charm was a ruthless man who wouldn't hesitate to kill his enemies. As Capone's power grew, so did the violence. Rival gangs fought for control, and the streets of Chicago became a war zone. The most infamous event of this bloody era was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. On February 14, 1929, 7 members of George Bugs Moran's North Side Gang were lined up against a wall and gunned down by men dressed as police officers. The massacre shocked the nation. Though Capone was in Florida at the time, many suspected he ordered the hit. The public's opinion quickly shifted. Capone was no longer seen as a charming outlaw. He was now public enemy no. 1. Law enforcement knew they couldn't pin violent crimes on Capone. He was too careful. But they found another way. The government began investigating his finances, and in 1931, Capone was charged with tax evasion. Despite his attempts to bribe jurors and delay the case, he was convicted and sentenced to 11 years in prison. This was the beginning of the end for Capone. Served his sentence in several prisons, including the infamous Alcatraz. Isolated from his criminal network, he began to deteriorate. Years of untreated syphilis took a toll on his mind and body. By the time he was released in 1939, he was a shadow of his former self. He retreated to his mansion in Florida, where he spent his final years in seclusion. On January 25, 1947, Al Capone died of a stroke and pneumonia at the age of 48. Al Capone's story is one of power, corruption, and downfall. He rose from the streets of Brooklyn to become the most feared gangster in America, only to lose everything in the end. His life serves as a warning, a testament to the ultimate fate that awaits even the most powerful criminals. What do you think about Al Capone's rise and fall? Do you think his crimes were justified in any way, or was he just another ruthless criminal? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories about the world's most infamous criminals, be sure to check out our next video on the most shocking criminal confessions. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive into the dark side of history. Thanks for watching.